Hey, what's going on, guys? So I'm going to show you some tips on how to use saturation in your mixes and really kind of show you some things to listen for, and specifically how I'm using the Slate Virtual Mix Rack and the saturation modules in that plugin in some of my recent mixes. So first of all, why would you use saturation in your mixes? Well, for me, I do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, I want to add a little bit more edge and maybe some attack to something. Number two, I want to add more size. I want something to take up more space in the mix. It's actually one of the most common ways that I use it. Like if I dial in a track with EQ, compression, and whatnot, and I just feel like it's still just sounding a bit small, and I want it to sound how it's sounding. Like I don't want to transform the sound anymore with EQ or something. I just want it to sound like a bigger version of what that is. Then adding some saturation is going to add extra harmonics to what's already there. It's going to expand it in the mix, make it sound bigger. Third, I will often use it in place of EQ. So this is maybe a little bit more advanced, but especially for things like guitars and vocals, if I am doing the regular mixing, EQ compression stuff, and again, I feel like it needs more of something in a specific area, but I don't want to do it with the EQ. For example, if I want more beef and low mids in the guitar, which I'll show you in this mix in a second, it's kind of like, usually it doesn't sound that good if you just boost like 400 hertz on a heavy guitar track, right? It sounds kind of woofy, muddy. But if you can get a saturation plugin that's going to be adding a lot more harmonics in that range, it's going to beef up those low mids in a way that is just more musical and just sounds bigger and better than just boosting on EQ. So enough talk, let me just show you some examples of what I'm doing, and woven into this is going to be how I'm actually using the Slate plugin to do it lately. But there are lots of other options too. So first with drums. So on my drum bus here, actually on both my parallel and my regular drum bus, let me mute the parallel so we can hear this one better. I've got this New York module. So if you open up the VMR, hit the harmonic tab here, this will show you all of the saturation type modules. And what I usually am focusing on these days is the Hollywood, the London, and the New York. And these all have like a slightly different vibe to them, and I'll try to demonstrate that to you here. So I'm using the New York on these drums, and I find this one to be pretty edgy. So let me show you how I actually go about choosing the saturation that is going to benefit the mix, how I need it to, and how I dial it in. So honestly, what I do is I will just pull this up, throw it on, and I'll just crank it. And then A/B it. So I can hear how it's adding a little bit of crunch and just kind of aggression to the attack of the drums, which is what I was looking for in this case. It's beefing up the low end a little bit, but that's not like the main thing I'm hearing. So once I crank that, I can dial it back in. But then often I'll disable that and I'll say, okay, let's try the next one just in case. So we'll try the London. So on that one, I'm hearing less of the edge on the attack, and I'm hearing more of like a beefed up, kind of focused more on the lower end of the spectrum, which is not really what I want. I don't really want my drums to sound more woofy or woolly right now. And then the last option is Hollywood. And this one's kind of in the middle of the two, in my opinion. Fairly smooth. And it's cool, but nothing's really standing out to me. Let's go back to the New York. Can you hear that a little bit clearer? Again, saturation is tricky because it can be kind of subtle, but it really adds up across the mix. But by doing this method, by just choosing a saturation plugin and then just like literally just cranking it to the max, you'll be able to hear actually more specifically what it's doing, which gives you a better idea of knowing what to listen for as you're dialing it in at a more subtle level. So now you can hear how this one's a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more edgy. So then I just back it off again. So now as I A/B this on and off, listen to exactly how I was saying. It's like it sounds like more of itself, just bigger and with a little bit added energy and size. The other good thing too, by the way, about some types of saturation, especially if you use more tape style saturation or tube style saturation, is you can put it after a lot of high end boosts. So say on a vocal or a snare, if you've got like tons of high end cranked on it and it sounds really good, but it's almost a little bit harsh, then that saturation can actually kind of, for lack of a better term, just soak up some of those harsher and higher end frequencies and kind of smooth them out. So that's another good use of it. So that's how I'm using it on drums. We also got the parallel bus here, where I'm doing the same thing, just more aggressively, which makes sense on a parallel compression track. So let's check out another area I'm using it here, and it's on the rhythm guitars. And in this case, I'm actually using 2. So let's bypass this first. The left and right sides are linked here, by the way. See what just the New York is doing. See how it's making it bigger, obviously a little bit louder. It's adding some harmonics. So if we crank it up, maybe match the volume a bit here. So again, to me, it's adding the harmonics in a slightly higher end of the mid-range, so it's adding a little bit more presence and kind of grit to the sound. Okay, and then we actually had it backed off quite a bit. Where did we have it in the actual mix here? Let me see. There we go. Okay, so that's beefing up kind of our higher mid-range there, and then I still wanted some more meat in kind of the low mids. So then I followed that up with the London. And that's pretty subtle, so let's crank it up a bit. So as I A/B this, listen to the low mids and see how it gets a little bit bigger. And then of course we had this back somewhere around there. There we go. So once again, A/B of both of these. And then I've even got it on the vocals here.
Have to walk through first to know, 'cause every day it only gets worse. Waiting for let, 'cause every day it only gets worse.
So this is it's just adding a little bit more just spice and size to it overall. But you saw the New York on the drums, you saw both the New York and the London on guitars, and then the Hollywood on the vocals. So I hope that helps give you some ideas of how you can use more saturation in your mixes, and then also just the process for doing it, because I know it can be subtle, it can be hard to hear, and you start to question, am I even doing anything worthwhile here by having this plugin on? Well, there's a tip, is just crank it up almost all the way, or until it starts like distorting in an audible, nasty way. Back it off a bit, and then you'll actually be able to hear where it's adding the saturation and what kind of harmonics are being added. And then that will give you a better idea to just reset and then start dialing it back up from scratch again to get to the point where you feel like that's adding the right kind of saturation and the amount that you need. Why not go try it out in a mix right now? See how it works for you. Leave a comment below and make sure you're subscribed and following this channel for future videos. And once again, I'm Jordan. We'll talk to you later.